Hello and welcome to Ligature Valley, a type design critique podcast for designers who want to think deeper than any algorithm. I'm your host, Caleb Dean, and each week I break down typefaces, both new releases and custom commissions, using a clear rubric that looks at originality, craft, functionality, and cultural impact. I'm really glad you're here. This is the pilot episode, so I want to lay some of the groundwork, what the show is, how it's going to work, and why it might be worth your while to add it to your weekly creative rhythm. So at its core, Ligature Valley is about connecting type design to culture. Yes, we'll look at new releases, display fonts, corporate rebrands, retail experiments, and open source projects. Not just talking about in a way of like what's trending, like I know that captures attention, but it doesn't do much in form of cultural groundwork. Instead of shouting an opinion that people might disagree with and trying to get backlash as a hype machine and algorithm fuel, I'll be asking really what matters. Why have they made these typographic decisions? What feels necessary, considered risky, or right on time? What does a typeface say even before you read the words? And again, why do these things matter in a cultural context? Especially as so many others overlook the underpinning indicators of type design on culture. With each episode, there's going to be a free podcast episode available wherever you listen. Shorter, audio only, maybe a version of just me speaking on YouTube, and really open to anybody. It'll still be smart, structured critique without all the social media noise. But if you want the full experience, including visual context, that is actually looking at the letter forms, sharing a screen as I talk about things that are going on, and a deeper commentary, there's going to be a subscription tier that's about the cost of your morning coffee. That version, of course, will include the video version for each episode, so you can actually see what I'm talking about as I review the typeface, the letter forms, the examples that they use, some branding applications, spacing quirks, and really all of it. Paid subscribers will also get extended reviews and occasional bonus segments, so diving into related topics. If a typeface comes out and the episode gets too long and needs to go to another one, you get those sort of things. So listen for free on your favorite audio platform and consider subscribing to see all the nitty-gritty details and support really a fellow designer. Now I've taught in design, worked in critique, and seen other review shows, so I've had some ideas about how to structure these critiques in a way that's enlightening, fair, and comparable across typefaces, which is important when evaluating type design. It sits really similarly to graphic design in a strange overlap of like art, commerce, and functionalism. Therefore, each critique is going to use this structured rubric because I believe good critique is clear, consistent, and generous. Every typeface I review is going to get scored 1 out of 25 across 4 different categories, which of course makes up for a score out of 100. The categories are originality and novelty, design, craft, and aesthetics, functionality and usability, contextual, and cultural impact. And because I prefer the investment of long-form content and long-engaged audience members, let's break down those categories. First, originality and novelty. This category is going to ask sort of the obvious. What's new here in this typeface? What does the typeface introduce as an original idea or offer as a fresh interpretation of a familiar form? Or is it something that falls flat in a sea of fonts? In an era where revivals and remixes are common, originality doesn't always mean inventing something from scratch, especially since it's quite challenging and risky to deviate from the norms of lettering and fonts. I'm really looking for surprise in detail and concept, whether that's a clever twist on a genre, a disruptive visual idea, or something that feels like it could only have been made right now in our culture and our context. High scores here mean that the typeface contributes something meaningful to the typographic landscape, not just like echoing what's sort of already been done and is out there, but expanding our conversation in ways that only fonts can, which is like with nuance and super subliminal detail that only designers pay attention to. The second category, design and craft aesthetics. This is where we'll look at the micros of the letter forms and the micro of the whole typeface. Design and craft and aesthetics evaluates how the letter forms are drawn, how consistent and intentional they feel across the set, and how refined the overall system is. I'll look at things like the nuances and curves, proportions, rhythm, spacing, and how each glyph contributes to the harmony of the whole. But of course, aesthetics aren't just about beauty. They're about precision and restraint, more so than outright flourish, which is especially true in type design. After all, type is a beautiful group of letters, not a group of beautiful letters. This category will really reward fonts that are deeply considered in their construction, whether they're elegant or expressive, playful or severe, or even like utilitarian and super discreet. The third category is functionality and usability. In this category, I'm going to assess how the font performs across different use cases. Is it legible at small sizes? Does it hold together in long texts or complex layouts? Does it behave reliably across print and screen environments? Or is it simply a plaything for designers to drool over and add to our catalogs as this sort of impulse buy? Functionality also includes practical features like how many weights it has, the language support, well-tuned spacing again, and thoughtful character sets. In this category, the typefaces ought to work well, adapting to the needs of the designer or the brand and the content that they ultimately support. And the fourth will be most interesting and probably least written about, which is the context and cultural impact. Every typeface exists within a visual context as soon as it's published. They draw on history, live in culture, and speak to a particular audience. This category is going to explore how well the typeface fits or challenges the cultural moment it's entering and all the things it's bringing into it. For retail fonts, we might ask, does it feel timely, timeless, or tired? For brand typefaces, we'll rub elbows with businesses and brand objectives. Does it align with the brand's voice, the values, the positioning, and what they need to be able to do to execute using their new typeface? And of course, as more and more agencies are putting more and more into the backbone of their typefaces culturally, I'll start to consider these references, nods and appropriations, what the font is saying before you even read the words, all that sort of stuff. A score here is going to reflect a typeface that's not just technically strong, but culturally attuned. One that knows where it belongs or boldly defines really where it could go and where it could take culture. Throughout the show and as the episodes build, I'll be digging into retail releases by incredible foundries we know and love, bespoke commissions or projects by designers with smaller audiences, and the occasional unhinged typographic moment. That might mean looking at TikTok Sans going open source or Spotify's evolving typographic identity. How Degular is the new Proxima Nova of screens, or the latest banger drop from a group of people here in the States, across the pond, or anywhere across the world who is making interesting type. Basically, if type intersects with branding, design culture, or impacts the way we read and move through the world, it's really on the table. I'm also choosing to do this in podcast form for a few reasons. Number one is that I know way too many designers who like to passively consume content, whether at their workstations, on the commute, or just at home. This can be added to your content Rolodex as a type design specific feature. Second is, while short form videos are all the rage at the moment, I really find that there's more at stake and more to remember in long form content. All the writings, artworks, films, and exposés on culture that have had long lasting shelf lives are long form. They're essays, not slogans, and deep dives, not overviews. The things that we can come back to and critique over the course of time. I'm also doing this podcast solo so that you, the audience, can be the one to respond with pushback and critique rather than a co-host who might close the loop. I'd like this to be less like you're an onlooker of conversation happening and more like philosophers of old. I'm just getting my whole critique and line of thought reasoning out in a place where others can attach or disregard it according to their own viewpoints. And I'm really hopeful you'll consume, respond, and ultimately put me in my place or tell me where I'm wrong. And fourth, the subscription model makes me the product, not you. If it works right, I won't have to sell advertising spots, which is essentially selling your attention to an outside company. By subscribing, when you invest in me, I can keep the advertisements away from you, and it keeps us in a nice little designer's circle. It's really designed and set up to be a win-win. And that's the whole setup. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe in your podcast app of choice. And if you want to support the deeper dive, you can join at ligaturevalley.com for just a few bucks a month to help me keep the lights on and at least sounding half decent like I know what a microphone is. That's all for this one. I'll catch you in the next one.